Blog Talk Radio. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Medlock Post radio show. This is where we educate, entertain, enlighten, and empower. The views and opinions on the Medlock Post radio show are those of the host and guests. They are not necessarily the views and opinions of Blog Talk Radio, Spreaker.com, its corporations, affiliates, or any other podcast streaming services. Thank you for joining the show today, and here is your host, Richard G. Medlock.
John F. Kennedy said this: "A nation that is afraid to let people judge the truth and falsehood in an open market is a nation that is afraid of its people." Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Medlock Post Radio Show, and I am your host, Richard G. Medlock, on this January 9th, 2023, episode 100. Yes, we made the century mark today. Our show today is My Kingdom for a Horse. Now, many of you will recognize that saying, and many will know where it came from. And we're going to talk about that, and I was going to jump right into that this morning until my cousin posted something on our one of our family Facebook groups. My cousin John, and it had a picture of a coffee cup that had overflowed, and there's coffee or liquid in the saucer. And our grandparents, my parents, that's how they drank their hot drinks, from the saucer. And John, that one side of my family is really, really, really close. And it's great to see we have great reunions. And it's just fun to be with these family members. And he says this, and he says, "My grandmother always drank her coffee like this, from the saucer, and I thought it was because it was too hot. Do you remember older generations drinking from their saucer? Today, I came across this poem that made me feel there was symbolism to the coffee ritual." Now, I had been told this before, and I had forgot about it. They didn't quote the poem, but one of my grandparents explained this to me. This is a poem, "Drinking from My Saucer" by John Paul Moore. Now, he might be a relative on my mother's side. This cousins I'm talking about is my dad's side. Here's this poem, "Drinking from My Saucer." I've never made a fortune, and it's probably too late now, but I don't worry about that much. I'm happy anyhow. And as I go along life's way, I'm reaping better than I sowed. I'm drinking from my saucer, 'cause my cup has overflowed. I don't have a lot of riches, and sometimes the going's tough. But I've got loved ones around me, and that makes me rich enough. I thank God for his blessings and the mercies he's bestowed. I drink from my saucer has overflowed. I remember times when things went wrong. My faith wore somewhat thin. But all at once the dark clouds broke and the sun peeped through again. So God, help me not to gripe about the tough roads that I've hoed. I'm drinking from my saucer, 'cause my cup has overflowed. If God gives me strength and courage when the way grows steep and rough, I've not asked for other blessings. I'm already blessed enough. And may I never be too busy to help others bear their loads. Then I'll keep drinking from my saucer, 'cause my cup has overflowed. What a great perspective on life. What a great perspective to gain happiness in life. What a great perspective on how to treat others. We don't need riches to be happy. You have a good family. You have a roof over your head. You have clothes and food, jobs. Most people get by on that, and they're happy. Thank you, John, for sending this out. It's just very uplifting. So I wanted to start the show with that today, throwing this in at the last minute, but it's worth it. And my cousins do listen to the show. I'll send him back. I said, I'm going to read this on the radio show today. My kingdom for a horse, folks. I thought of this the other day, especially Saturday after they got past the 15th vote and McCarthy was elected Speaker of the House, after agreeing to a lot of constitutional terms that needed to be back in the rules in the House to make it more like the people's house. We had 20 rebel, radical, insurrectionist, terrorist Republicans in the House that wanted to destroy America and its national security, according to the media and the Democratic Marxists and to some other Republicans. They were doing the right things. We talked about that on Friday's episode 99. Go back and listen to it to understand where we're coming from, if you haven't listened already. I started thinking, okay, McCarthy, you got elected, and you gave this really nice speech early Saturday morning when nobody's watching, and you made some very nice comments, very positive, very American comments. You even had the House standing when you said, God bless America. The Republican House stood and applauded and yelled and cheered. What were the Democratic Marxists doing? Oh, about half of them stood up, but they weren't applauding. They were standing there like, wait a minute, we're the gods. Are you applauding us? Oh, thank you. Thank you. No, we weren't applauding the Democratic Marxists. We were applauding, or they were applauding our Creator, our God in heaven. He's the one that blesses this land. So I started thinking, a horse, my kingdom for a horse. Now let's back up and help you understand if you've never read Shakespeare's Richard III. If you've never read Shakespeare, I encourage it. There's a lot of good life lessons there. He approached human nature, as did Charles Dickens in his novels, and as Longfellow and others. They understood and approached human nature and told stories about them. So here, It's a quotation from Act 5, Scene 4 of Shakespeare's Richard III. And at the end of the play, Richard has lost his horse on the battlefield, and we see his extreme frustration. Richard's opponent, Richmond, had sent men out on the battlefield as decoys dressed like him. Richard had killed 5 of them, but Richmond himself had eluded him and is now hunting Richard down. Richard has done well without a horse, but has no chance now with Richmond closing in on him. All right. So Richard's close ally, Catesby, Catesby, rescue, my lord of Norfolk, rescue, rescue. The king enacts more wonders than a man, daring and opposite to every danger. His horse is slain, and all on foot he fights, seeking for Richmond in the throat of death. Rescue, fair lord, or else the day is lost. Richard III enters. A horse, a horse! My kingdom for a horse! Catesby, withdraw, my lord. I'll help you to a horse. Richard III, slave, I have set my life upon the cast, and I will stand the hazard of the die. I think there be 6 Richmonds in the field. 5 have I slain today instead of him. A horse, my kingdom for a horse. Now, although he lost his horse, Richmond kept fighting, but eventually was succumbed. And Richmond goes on. In the next scene, Richmond will announce that Richard III has been slain and the bloody dog is dead. Victory is his, and the Tudor dynasty is born. How about that? All right. So he knows he cannot win the battle on foot against cavalry fighters, and his kingdom won't be his kingdom for long unless he finds a horse and is able to ride to victory. So let's put that into the context of what was going on in the House of Representatives among the GOP last week for 4 days, 4.5 days. There was a battle going on. And let's call the GOP 20, let's call them Richmond. And let's call MacArthur Richard III. Now, he had a kingdom. McCarthy thought that, hey, I'm just going to walk right into this. Everybody loves me, and I'll just, boom, I'll be elected. But guess what? He made some fatal flaws, Richard III did. Since the election, he was laying down the rules. He was being the dictator, just like Nancy Pelosi. Here's my rules. This is how we're going to operate, and it wasn't much different than how Pelosi did it. Well, 20 Richmonds said, no way. We cannot keep the status quo. There needs to be a change. This needs to become the people's house. And slowly and slowly and slowly, McCarthy kept giving in to these good constitutional means that the 20 Richmonds wanted into the rules. McCarthy lost his horse to start with. He didn't have it to ride on. He was battling on foot. Yeah, he had some supporters, but they weren't much help because they were the outsiders. They could not get involved internally. So slowly. So it wasn't that Richard or McCarthy was slaying his enemies, and they weren't enemies. They should be co-workers. Came to an understanding, yes, that's the best for the kingdom. And he gave away parts of his kingdom to make it a better country, to make it a better house, to make it more of we represent we the people than, oh, we're going to do what we want to do and what the lobbyists tell us to do and what the globalists tell us to do, on and on. So they took his horses away, and then these miracles started happening. And a resolution was brought about that gave McCarthy his kingdom, so to speak, but with limitations. Oh, don't we love Shakespeare? A horse, a kingdom for my horse. Well, guess what? Nobody was bringing McCarthy a horse. Only the 20 rebel, radical, insurrectionist, terrorist GOP congressmen had the horses. And the saddles and the reins and the swords and everything else. And they finally brought, with agreement, written agreement, to McCarthy his horse. And not only his horse, but they gave him back the reins to the House of Representatives. Now, I sent Kevin McCarthy Saturday a message. He's up there saying all the right things, we represent the people. We're going to represent them. We do what's best for them. We've heard this before. It's been lip service. So I sent him a message, and I said, we, the people, have heard what you said this morning. And we, the people, are going to hold you to what you just said. We are watching you. And he had some other messages that came in on very much the same line. The Democratic Marxists, on the other hand, are fit to be tied. They saw the status quo die. They saw their ability to control the Republicans die. On Twitter and Facebook and every other place, on the news media, they were ranting and raving and threatening. Hakeem Jeffries came out and said, oh, these nice things to the American people, and in the next sentence, ripped and tore and attacked the GOP in the House and basically threatened them, you do it our way or we're not going to help. Well, you know what, Mr. Jeffries? We don't need your help now. You're in the minority. You're in the minority. Get used to it. Life goes on. So they are literally beside themselves. They now see a Republican Party in the House of Representatives that grew a backbone. We hope that grew a backbone. Now, time's going to tell. But right now, with all these concessions that McCarthy made, and he should have been running on these things in the first place. These were concessions he had to give into to get his horse to keep his kingdom. Here are some of them. Americans and the Conservative Caucus, get the Americans and the Conservative Caucus ultimately won. But it was a shame these items had to be requested from the GOP leadership in the first place. You see, that's what we have been saying all along. They just go along and comply with the Democrats. Those days are over in the House. I'm not sure what we're going to do in the Senate. And I hope the Senate is watching this, and I hope some senators, some good American senators, saw what happened and pulled something like this off with the GOP in the Senate. All right, members of the Conservative House Freedom Caucus got commitments to be added to the rules panel. The committee exerts tremendous power by setting the terms of debate, but usually operates as a tool of the speaker. It traditionally has a 9-to-4 ratio, so the majority never loses. McCarthy had already agreed to a 5-vote requirement to make the motion, which sets up essentially a vote of no confidence in the speaker, and agreed to lower it to a single lawmaker. That goes back to Thomas Jefferson. He installed that in 1800. So they've gone back to Thomas Jefferson. They've gone back to the founding fathers and put in a rule that has worked since then until the Democratic Marxists took it out years ago. McCarthy agreed to take a hard line on increasing the statutory debt limit, which Congress must lift to accommodate spending it has agreed to through appropriations. Right now, there is no debt limit. It was not in the last spending bill. And Nancy Pelosi and Schumer would not pass one. That's why they're spending willy-nilly. If you don't know what willy-nilly means, look it up. Nilly is N-I-L-L-Y, just like Willie, but with an N. I like this. The holdouts. Yeah, they're holdouts, all right. They were fighters. Got a pledge to get floor votes on term limits and border security. The former, in particular, could drive a wedge through the conference. McCarthy himself was elected to the House in 2006. Now, someone came up against this and wrote a thing. Well, it takes a amendment to the Constitution to change to do term limits or to change the Constitution. But it starts in Congress. Ding dong. The votes come from Congress or an Article 5 convention. So now you actually have lawmakers have put term limits on the table. Get the discussion going. And they're going to find a lot of Americans will back it. Border security. Now, we're going to get into that. I don't know if you've seen President Biden's announcement Friday afternoon about their new immigration policy, folks. I don't know if we'll get to that today, but it is a joke. A joke. I actually sent a message to Mr. Biden, and I says, I have read your immigration policy. I cannot stop laughing. That was my message to Joe Biden. Okay. The Conservative Leadership Fund, a PAC backed by backed by McCarthy, brokered a deal with the Club for Growth that will impact Republicans that join the House in the future. That PAC cannot participate in primaries, only in the open election. McCarthy reportedly agreed to allow open rules on spending measures, which could lead to lengthy debates and efforts to zero out funding for programs unpopular with Republicans. So what does that mean, folks? It means if you want new spending over here, you've got to cut that amount of spending over here. So you can't get A without cutting B. It's called offsets. They used to do that. But no, Obama administration, the Biden administration, and when the Democrats had control of Congress, that's why we're almost at $32 trillion debt. I think when Obama, don't hold me to this figure, I think when he took office in 2008, it was less than $10 trillion. Yeah, that'll blow your mind. Another concession is a cap on discretionary spending. Although spending levels are usually negotiated by both chambers and get influenced by the president's budget request upon discretionary spending. That means you only have X number of dollars, and once it's gone, that's it. Republicans are girding to take on the Obama administration, and the conservatives forced a commitment to set up a committee on the weaponization of the DOJ, Department of Justice. The idea had been floated as a subcommittee on the House Judiciary Committee. Its exact structure and membership were uncertain. Now, Representative Jim Jordan will head that up. He's on fire about that. This last bullet may be the most important because the Democratic, they put socialists, I call them Marxists, are very concerned about the deep state being uncovered. Far left Politico reports, and we're talking far left, Marxist left Politico, a proposed subcommittee to investigate weaponization of the federal government, a key demand of House conservatives who delivered Speaker McCarthy the gavel, would be given sweeping investigatory powers that include explicit authority to review ongoing criminal investigations. Because they're charging people out of the air because they're political criminals or political opponents. They're friends of Trump. Or they were somewhere near Washington, D.C., within the confines of the United States of America on January 6, 2021. And speaking of the January 6th committee, did you see what they did? They sealed everything. Videos, interrogations, testimony, everything for 50 years. Now, why would they do that? Going back to this, they want the deep state uncovered. Now, Trump did a good job of that. The language of the proposed select subcommittee, which would operate under the Judiciary Committee, chaired by Jim Jordan, also gives the panel power to access any information shared with the House Intelligence Committee. That panel typically reserves the highest level classified intelligence and briefings of any committee in Congress. So you see, folks, they are not messing around. They want the truth to come out for the American people to see how corrupt the government has become. And Kevin McCarthy did not want this to happen because he was part of it. Maybe they said, we'll give you immunity or something. Both provisions appear to have been added during final negotiations between McCarthy and a band of hardline detractors. Hardline detractors. I'd say hardline constitutional conservatives that briefly denied him the speakership. An earlier version of the proposal made no mention of ongoing criminal investigations or the Intelligence Committee and limited the probe to the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and Department of Justice. Added to this on Friday night, McCarthy announced in his acceptance speech that the left's hiring of 87,000 IRS agents would be tackled first. Please remember, the House Ways and Means Committee, controlled by the Republicans now, is the purse strings of the government. And if they don't approve any funding and the House doesn't approve it, there's no money for it. And you're saying, hallelujah. However, let me make this clear. The caveat here, buyer beware, that with Biden sitting in office, the Democrats controlling the Senate, Biden can sit there, make all the executive orders he wants. The Treasury Department will print all the money they want. The Federal Reserve will print all the money they want to fund all this stuff and run up the debt. So that's my warning there. McCarthy says, I know the night is late, but when we come back, our very first bill will appeal the funding of 87,000. You see, we believe government should be to help you, not to go after you. Well, McCarthy, that's a big change for you. It's a way of thinking. I hope you have fully woken up to that. Another concession given is that there will be 72 hours given to review bills before they come to the floor. Given the sheer density of some bills that come through, that again seems more than fair. Now, this is part of the article. This is a good list of conditions that the real conservatives in the party bartered for. What's sad is there were only 20 representatives that would fight for these straightforward conditions that should have been there in the first place, which we said earlier. 222 Republicans should have been on this page. But then you had, was it Don Bishop or Don Bacon, screaming and yelling because McCarthy couldn't get elected. Well, let's go cut a deal with the Democrats so they'll vote for you and you'll have power. And then we can work with them on the committees. And AOC comes out, oh, let's put together a coalition government. Oh, yeah, with the Democrats in charge again. Well, folks, you know when you do coalition governments? When you have a parliamentary type government. We have a constitutional republic, not a parliamentary type government. So here they are trying to push a parliamentary style government and take control. Now, Don Bishop or Don Bacon, I can't remember now, should be kicked out of the Republican Party. You want to be a Republican or a Democrat, go be a Democrat. He should not be given a seat on any committee. Except maybe the committee that oversees the janitors in the Capitol building. Now, he's done this in the past. He's brought this up and been ignored, and he got ignored this time. Hopefully. It's great to see this type of process. I mean, all we heard for 4 days was how the rebel, radical, insurrectionist, terrorist GOP House members were destroying America. They were risking national security over these insane. But they don't like McCarthy, so they don't want him there. This is all a personality conflict. Da 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 da. That's all we heard. They were asking for good constitutional means whereby to turn the House of Representatives back into the people's house, the way the Founding Fathers wanted. Now, we're still a long way from that, folks, but this is a start. And if these things are held in line, it's a good start. Now, Hakeem Jeffries is beside himself out there in the media. I think I even no, I didn't send him a message. Now, you know what? On Twitter, if you'd done something before Musk bought it, I'd have been shut down so fast it wouldn't have been funny. I'd have been booted off there. But now, it goes back to what John F. Kennedy said. A nation that is afraid to let people judge the truth and falsehood in an open market is a nation that is afraid of its people. The Democratic Marxists are afraid of we, the people. That's why they want to control us. That's why they want us under their thumb, under welfare system, Medicaid system, whatever it takes to control you. And we cannot let that happen. We, the people, need to take charge again. Now, McCarthy says, I hope one thing is clear after this week. I will never give up. I will never give up for you, the American people. And I will never give up on keeping our commitment to America. Now, the commitment to America is this policy thing that he wrote right before the election or a month or so that's really kind of laughable within itself. There's nothing of teeth in there. And what these 20 GOP rebel, radical, insurrectionist terrorists did was put teeth into that commitment. Now, the one thing I haven't heard from them is we're going to lower taxes. We're going to do away with regulations. Haven't heard that yet. He says, our nation is worth fighting for. And then he continues, you know, my father always told me it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Well, Mr. Speaker, I agree. You've had a rough start. You were out there screaming, my horse, for a kingdom. For my kingdom. You have that seat now. So how are you going to finish, Mr. McCarthy, Speaker McCarthy? How are you going to finish? Continued, and now we need to finish strong for the American people. As Speaker of the House, my ultimate responsibility is not to my party, my conference, or even my Congress. My responsibility, our responsibility, is to our country. 2 months ago, you voted for a new direction for our country. You embraced our commitment to America, and now we are going to keep our commitment to you. And we, the people, Mr. Speaker, will hold you to these very words. And that's the message I sent to him. Continuing with Mr. McCarthy. If the son of a fireman and grandchild of immigrants can rise to the highest position in the most important legislative body in the world, and if my colleague Hakeem Jeffries with his life story can rise to lead his party, then opportunity and democracy still thrive in America. He added to Leader Jeffries, "There will be times we will agree and many times we will differ. I promise that our debates will be passionate but never personal. And now the hard work begins. What we do here today, next week, next month, and next year will set the tone for everything that follows." Well, Mr. Jeffries has set the tone. You still need to do it our way. That's his tone right now. They're thinking now that the Republicans are going to wimp out again. But I think every Republican, or most of them, learned from this experience. Going. Hakeem says, "I need to warn you. I also won 100% of my conference vote on the floor 2 years ago, so good luck." Excuse me, that was McCarthy to Hakeem. "I need to warn you, I also won 100% of my conference." Okay, so McCarthy's firing back at Hakeem. McCarthy revealed some of his priorities for the session, which was investigating China, securing the country's border, and attempting to eliminate some of the federal debt, which is over $31 trillion. Right now, let's just stop adding to it. He says, "We will also address America's long-term challenges, the debt and the Chinese Communist Party. Progress must speak with one voice on both of these issues." Well, the Republicans will speak on it. The Democratic Marxists, who are, a lot of them are owned by the CCP, like Biden and some of the others up there on the Hill, they're not going to walk away from China. He vowed to build a nation that is safe and to help form a future that is built on freedom. He wanted to construct a government that is accountable, where Americans can get the answers they want, need, and deserve. So transparency. Our system is built on checks and balances. It's time for us to be the check and provide some balance to the president's policies. There is nothing more important than making it possible for American families to live and enjoy the lives they deserve. That is key here. The House Republicans now are becoming the checks and balances of the government, which have basically been thrown away. The president thinks he can just go do whatever he wants to do because nobody's going to call him on it. Some judges and the Supreme Court have called him on a few things. He doesn't care. They just keep doing it. But now the House is going to call him on these things. We're going to check you, and we're going to put balance back into government. He wants to stop wasteful Washington spending to lower the price of groceries, gas, cars, and housing, and stop the rising national debt. We pledge to cut the regulatory burden, lower energy costs for families, and create good-paying jobs for workers by unleashing reliable, abundant, American-made energy. He knows it can happen because Trump did it. And I think that was why Trump was backing him, because McCarthy was there when those things happened, and Trump says, look, let's get you into the speakership, and let's get some things moving to take us back to making America great again. Our nation is worth fighting for. Our rights are worth fighting for. Our dreams are worth fighting for. Our future is worth fighting for. That was his final comments there. Yeah, it was a crazy week, and there were things said. Now, Dan Crenshaw of North Carolina called the 20 GOP terrorist. He has since apologized, says I was wrong. I apologize. I will support all of their ideas. This is what we need to do. Okay, he got caught up in the heat of the battle, which he does at times. And then Representative Rogers, that tried to physically attack Matt Gaetz, they had to hold him back, apologized. I am sorry. Matt Gaetz has issued a statement saying, I forgive Representative Rogers. He's fine. There was heat going on. I understand this. I sent Representative Rogers a message and I said, sir, we forgive you too. Now, focus that energy that you used against Gaetz to go after the Democratic Marxists and that want to destroy America and help us shut them down. This is how it works, folks. I mentioned the other day, the 1787 Constitutional Convention was not a picnic. There was debates. There were arguments. There were heated temperatures. We had that here. But calm heads, if you can keep your head about you when all others are losing it, you can not only keep your horse, but you can keep your kingdom. Chip Roy, who I've come to love, warned McCarthy that the GOP will enforce the deal that you agreed to secure your speakership. And we're going to hold you to it as well. And Chip Roy on CNN said, we will use the tools of the House to enforce the terms of the agreement. All right. This is great, folks. It is great. Good came out of it, although the media and the Democratic Marxists and others don't think so. Even some Republicans out there. Good came out of this. It helped McCarthy, Speaker McCarthy, refocus what he's supposed to be doing. Now, if he starts going off rail, it'll probably get ugly again. That no vote, Speaker McCarthy. Now, and also remember, Speaker McCarthy now is number 2 in line for the presidency. If something were to happen to Biden and Harris, he's president. All righty. I see we are just about out of time, folks. I'm going to play a soundbite or two. That didn't happen. We'll do some of that tomorrow. We did not get to the Biden-Harris administration announces new border enforcement actions fact sheet. There's quite a few things they brought up on here. A couple of things. The whole thing is laughable. It's laughable. We'll start with this tomorrow. You need to understand what they're trying to do here. They outline all of this stuff. I'll go to the last paragraph of this fact sheet from the White House. It's 5 pages. It's anyway. The Biden-Harris administration. You remember Kamala Harris, the vice president? You remember? Yeah, I know. Some of you are shaking your head. Oh, yeah. She's the border czar. Oh, yeah, okay. The Biden-Harris administration will do everything within its authority and available resources to manage this challenge, comma, but until and unless Congress delivers the funding as well as a comprehensive immigration reform measures President Biden requested, the United States' broken immigration system will indeed remain broken. Well, folks, the Democratic Marxists had 2 full years to fix the system. All they did was broke it. Break it. I know, break it. Funding, the funding that you put in this humongous omnibus bill right before Christmas, the money you gave to the border specifically said you cannot use 1 penny of this money to secure the border or prevent migrants from coming over. So don't sit there and say it's Congress's fault when you had the opportunity 2 weeks ago, before this came out, to get money to do what you want it to do. This is, AJ, we'll go over some of the things tomorrow to blow your mind. Like I said, I'm laughing. Cursor. That'll be on episode 101. This is episode 100. It was interesting. Kevin McCarthy, Speaker McCarthy, kept saying, "I don't quit." And that reminded me, I started thinking, and I said, somebody wrote a poem about that. So I just typed in, "don't quit." And there it was. John Greenleaf Whittier. He wrote a poem, "Don't Quit." When things, well, it's an inspirational poem. Let me, before I get started out, this is the last thing that we're going to do today. But I like this. I've used this before. Things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile, but you have to sigh. When care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is queer with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns. And many a failure turns about when he might have won had he stuck it out. Don't give up though the pace seems slow. You may succeed with another blow. Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint of the clouds of doubt. And you never can tell how close you are. It may be near when it seems so far. So stick to the fight when your heart is hit, and when things seem worse, that you must not quit. That, folks, is the Medlock Post radio show for today. Yeah, let's go out with Light My Fire. I was lit up today. There's exciting things happening in America. Exciting things. Catch fire. Light the fire in you to stand up and speak up and do something to save America. Understand the Constitution. Go read it. Go study it. Become a self-made person. A self-taught person. Some of the greatest people in the world were self-educated. Don't give it up. Ladies and gentlemen, May God bless America. May God bless you. And may you have a wonderful day. Light my fire.